Hi, Dr. Karen Curry Parker here with your Quantum Human Design Evolution Report. I got a lot to cover this week, and certainly because it's the beginning of the month of December, we're going to do a little bit of an overview of where we're at and what to expect as we move into the holiday season and really look at the end of the calendar year, beginning of the new calendar year, and of course the concluding cycle in the quantum human design year. So let's start first with the big picture overview. We've had a big shift in Pluto, and everybody gets excited whenever we see big shifts in slow moving planets, and in this case Pluto has moved into Capricorn. But in human design, what we oftentimes see is that shift isn't necessarily accompanied by a dramatic gate shift, at least not in the beginning, that cycles take time to conclude and take time to begin. And oftentimes, even though we have an astrological cycle and we have an end point and a beginning point, what we're really seeing is an overlap of seasons and cycles. And so we're going to start first by talking about Pluto is still highlighting the gate 60. And that energy of the gate 60, which is called conservation, is an important part of evolution. When we talk about evolution in the context of quantum human design, we see that evolution happens in a 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of a way. So we see that mutation will go forward and take big leaps. And then after that big leap, we have to sort of reevaluate and say, wait, was that exactly what we were intending? I don't know. Maybe we need to reevaluate some of that leap that we just took. Now, that's, of course, looking at it through the lens of a singular person. All evolution is ultimately collective, which means it doesn't all happen in sync. And I talked a little bit about this last month, that it's more like a threshold. And there will be some people who will dive through that threshold into the new era with great gusto. And in doing so, they're going to be, trying out the new. They are the quantum leap into the new. And oftentimes that works. And sometimes it doesn't. Hold on, drop my notes. I'll turn the phone off in the meantime too. So they take these quantum leaps through the threshold and they're waiting on the other side. And sometimes they get over there and they're like, whoops, I jumped the gun. It was too early. And now they're way ahead of the time and nobody understands what they're doing over there on the other side of the threshold. And they have to kind of come back and sort of mediate and figure out what to do. You're going to get some people that are going to move through the threshold very intentionally and deliberately. They're going to be doing the work along the way. They're going to be contemplative and evaluative, and they will sort of ooze through the threshold as best as they can, as long as they feel prepared and ready. And then you'll have some people who really just don't want to go through that threshold. They want to hold on. They want to go back to how things used to be, and they are resisting that forward momentum. All of those parts are part of evolution, and you really don't want to have evolution or a revolution without conservatism. You need to have people who are holding the balance on the other side of the threshold, making sure that we ran through the right threshold, that we didn't jump so far ahead that we got ahead of ourselves and we weren't ready yet, that we don't have a foundation laid, that we're being so flippin' new that we don't know if what we're doing is actually going to work. Genuine innovation happens and is built upon looking at what does work and growing it. I'm going to say that again because it's so important. Real innovation happens from looking at what has worked in the past and growing it. Yes, you'll add new things to it, but you cannot throw the proverbial baby out with the bathwater, which is why conservatism is so important in evolution. And what will happen is when we get to key evolutionary touch points, if you will, what will happen is the people who are really heavy with that conservatism energy are going to push back the hardest, because we're starting to reach a critical mass of people going through the threshold and they're getting anxious because it's limiting their options, and they're not quite ready yet because that's not their job. Their job is to hold the line so that we know that when we're going through the threshold, we're going through it intelligently, reasonably. We're not running willy-nilly to the other side and getting ahead of ourselves. So this theme of conservatism, Pluto has been highlighting this theme of conservatism off and on for the last like almost 2 years, and it's hard, it's heavy. It makes us feel like, some of us, like we're going back, and it makes some of us afraid to go forward. And it's created a lot of tension. It is the terminal point, though, in an evolutionary cycle. It is this tension point between the old and the new. And we're still in that when we look at this Pluto transit through the lens of quantum human design. We're still in it. We're still sort of working our way through. How do we get through the threshold? How do we get through the threshold and not throw everything away? How do we bring with us the things that we know are going to work? And how do we do this in such a way that we reach a critical mass of movement without completely disrupting everything? And of course, you really can't not disrupt everything. Things have to get disrupted because stories are changing. The narrative of who we are, the human story, is changing, and it's changing very dramatically. When we look ahead to the emotional solar plexus mutation of 2027, we're in the midst of a very huge shift. Our hardwiring is changing. Our human story is going through a dramatic upgrade. And that upgrade has been at play since the late 1800s. I believe that it began as soon as we saw the emergence of quantum physics as a recognized body of science in the late 1800s. And I believe it will be continuing for another 120 years. Human evolution takes time. We still haven't completed everything we needed to do from the last mutation, which happened in 1781. So there's just a lot of stuff happening, and we're not going to really see, I think, the biggest pronounced awareness of the shift in Pluto until Pluto goes into the gate 41, the gate of imagination, in January. And of course, the Human Design New Year also starts with the sun highlighting the gate 41, the gate of imagination. And it marks the beginning, I believe, with this movement of Pluto into the 41 in January, the beginning of a creative revolution, the beginning of a season, a cycle, a 19-year creative cycle that promises to initiate us into a new way of creating, a new way of seeing the world, a new way of operating the world, a new way of being human. And that new way of being human, I believe, promises to give us the skills that we need to find the solutions to the challenges facing humanity today, because we will be more creative. And certainly I would say our children being born now, and our young children, still in their teens, if you look to the children right now, you're going to see a little bit of what that might look like. That these creative beings are ushering in this new creative era. And I don't know how it is for you, but I certainly will say I have the privilege of hanging out with a lot of teens right now. My youngest projector daughter is 15, and she's in a very small, beautiful school with lots of teenagers. And I think when I look at them, if they're going to be in charge of the future, we're going to be fine. We're going to be fine. They're going to figure it out, because they have an enormous capacity of figuring all of this out. So that's sort of the big overview. Let's look more specifically at what's going on at the planets right now. And we're going to start first with the nodes. The nodes, when I talk about the nodes sort of set the plot outline for the story we're living in. We're living in a story. So right now, the plot outline for most of this year has been highlighting the gate 17, the gate of anticipation, and the gate 18, the gate of realignment, which is basically a story plot outline that has been an invitation for us to look at our patterns and habits and to really explore whether we've been actually preparing for what's next. We've been clearing our old stories. We've been clearing our old patterns. We've been clearing our old habits. We've been invited into looking at our personal narrative and really asking ourselves, is the story we tell the world and ourselves about who we are and how we are a true story, the real story of who we are and what's possible for us? And we've been given an invitation by the nodes to really make sure that the story we tell is worthy of who we are. In the shadow of this is an energy of worry. It is an energy of judgment, of criticism, of striking out at others, of sharing opinions. And certainly if you've been anywhere near social media, you may have seen some of this happening over the course of this year and reaching kind of a peak as we've gone through some pretty significant changes here, at least in the United States, in the socio-political environment. And that's not limited to this space. It's or this country. It's been happening all over the world. And so, this energy of criticism is also in the optimized expression, the energy for realigning, to making sure that we're practicing and tweaking and adjusting and realigning and practicing and adjusting and practicing and adjusting and doing the work necessary to perfect our pattern, to perfect our story, to perfect any of those places where we've been wobbly in telling the true story of who we really are. The nodes are shifting this week into the 25, the gate of spirit, and the 46, the gate of embodiment, which means the story is changing a little bit. The plot outline is shifting, and we're not so much in the weeds with the patterns anymore. We are now asking ourselves, is the story we're telling in alignment with our higher purpose, and are we walking our talk? And so we've been doing the inner work with the 17, 18. Now we have to embody that work. We have to actually do the work on the physical plane. And part of that is not so much doing, pushing, as much as it is making sure that you are being the person you need to be to fulfill the story, the true story of who you really are. And it's an interesting theme, right? This is a theme that is part of the cross of the vessel of love. It is a direction-giving energy. We are being invited to get serious about taking ownership of our trajectory and no longer allowing ourselves to be led by a story that was given to us, that conditioned us, versus a story of our own choosing. Just sit with that for a little bit. So definitely an opportunity for us to go deeper into exploring what is your higher purpose? What is the bigger, more spiritual purpose of why are you here? And are you really embodying that story? Are you really doing the work necessary to live in alignment with that purpose? And if you're not, if you need to adjust that, be prepared. That dissonance is going to reveal itself under the influence of these nodes and give you a curriculum that's going to support you in getting yourself realigned with your higher purpose. Now, December is a fun month because we end December on the cross of the vessel of love. It's the middle of a creative quarter. It's the middle of a creative quarter that leads us to January 21st when the sun moves into well, it actually goes until February, but when the sun moves into the gate 41, we see the beginning of the new quantum human design new year. And we see, before we walk into that new year, darkness. And I say darkness, I'm not talking about evil darkness. I'm saying we're in a season of self-reflection, of going inward, of really assessing the previous creative cycle, the previous year, and really asking ourselves, what worked? What didn't? What needs to change? How do we bring it into greater alignment with our higher purpose? And really, kind of getting clear and categorizing and cataloging and codifying what has come before. I love this about the Quantum Human Design New Year because there's a stillness and an internal reflection that happens before we enter into the next new creative cycle. And so there's always this energy in the traditional calendar year, by the end of the year, of pushing into the new year and setting your intentions by December 1st and moving onward. I can't think of a worse time on the human design calendar to start New Year's resolutions than December 1. It always starts with cross of tension and upheaval and a potential for a struggle and a fighting, and it's just the worst energy for New Year's intentions. So don't make any New Year's intentions this year. Wait until the end of January because you'll get a lot more celestial support at that point in time. But it is important to set the stage for doing that work in January. And that means this is a time to really let yourself dream and think and contemplate and do a review of 2024. Do a review of how has the year been for you? What did work? What didn't work? And what do you want to grow next year? That's really what we're tasked with, especially in the month of December. And in the month of December, we get a little bit of a reprieve. So we don't often talk about the importance of cycles of contraction, but I want to bring that up here because it's a lot of what December brings us. You always have cycles of contraction before you have growth and momentum. We sometimes call that rest. We sometimes call that play. We sometimes call that meditating. You call it whatever you want to call it, but you have to sometimes pull back and go into the darkness, right? It's kind of like that cycle in the northern hemisphere when we go into winter and literally it's dark. I don't know where you all, but I'm in Wisconsin. It's like it starts to get dark at 3:30 and it's dark until 9 o'clock in the morning, and it's just dark, right? And this year seems, I don't know, exceptionally dark. It seems darker than dark. But that darkness is a contemplative cycle. It's an involution where we go inward and we explore those important questions that I've been sharing with you. And that's not just the work of contemplation. It also means sometimes we got to disengage from the heaviness of it all, right? It feels pretty heavy. It's been heavy. It's going to keep being heavy. But we ought to have cycles of joy and play and love and self-empowerment and compassion. All of that hits us at the end of December with the sun and the earth, highlighting the gate 10 and highlighting the gate 15 and highlighting the gate 58. We get to play. And Christmas happens, and actually Hanukkah this year and Kwanzaa happens sort of all in this season of joy, literally. And it is a time when I really want to encourage you at the end of this year to do your best to let go, to do your best to go explore the things that bring you the greatest amount of joy. Give yourself the blessing of an intentional couple of weeks of contraction before we move into the momentum of end of January, and the beginning of the Quantum Human Design New Year. So take that season of contraction, take that cycle of contraction, and give yourself that gift, because that's essential for activating creative power. It's essential for restoring, restocking your energy bank. Think of it this way. I mean, your energy is like a bank. If we're pushing, think of the will center, right? If we're pushing, and we use it all up, and then we continue to push with the energy we don't have, then we arrive on the doorstep of the new season, the new creative cycle, already depleted before we started. So think of it as an internal cycle of contraction and a time to restock your energy banks, and to do that with play and joy, and to recognize that joy is not an emotion. Joy isn't even, on the will center. Joy is down in the root. And it is a loving exploration of the things that spark your passion, and to begin the exploration of, can you translate that passion into your dreams for the new year? And is the way in which you are embodying your life right now, that's that nodal theme, is it an embodiment of the things that strike the chord of joy in your soul? And if not, how can you bring that into your life better, in a more expanded way? That's what I want you to think about in this season of involution, darkness. I hate to call it darkness because I know that in the Southern Hemisphere, you got the whole opposite thing going. But so think of it as an involution. We're in an involution cycle. So if you're in Australia, go to the beach and think, right? If you're up here in Wisconsin, just get under the heavy blanket and watch the fire and think. All right. So that's sort of the big overstory. Now, we also are in what I would call a retrograde-a-palooza. We've got Mercury retrograde. We've got Mars that's going to go retrograde next Saturday. We've got Jupiter retrograde. We've got Uranus retrograde. We've got Neptune retrograde. So we still have a lot of retrograde energy, which is actually the perfect energy to feed that involution cycle, because when we have a lot of heavy retrograde motion happening in the celestial weather, it can feel like you're all revved up with nowhere to go, or it can kind of feel like you're stuck in cosmic goo. Like things are just not happening the way you were hoping, and you feel a little bit gummed up in the system. And so if that's the way you feel, again, instead of fighting it, because you'll burn yourself out if you fight it, let yourself make peace with it. Breathe into it and let yourself be in the flow of these energies. These energies are part of involution. They're inviting us to go inward. And so we are exploring in a big way the theme of power and empowerment. We are exploring what do we need to grow and change to bring into deeper harmony and alignment with our authentic self. We are breaking free from limiting patterns of the past. We are relying on our experiences and contemplating our experiences to really gauge what are the things that are worth fighting for in our lives. What are the things that where do we really want to be putting our energy, so we're not spraying and praying energy all over the place, but we are focused and deep in alignment. We've taken the big picture view, and when we put ourselves into action, we're aligning ourselves in a direction that really feels productive. It really feels like it's going to make the changes that we've been seeing. So the sun starts this week highlighting the gate 9, the gate of convergence, which is very much that energy of focus. We are grounded in enthusiasm, which can be a little bit of a challenge for us, because sometimes that 16 energy, that earth energy, makes us want to leap ahead with great enthusiasm and zest. But if we are not aligning ourselves in a focused direction, we can be pushing with a lot of enthusiasm in the wrong place. So make sure that you are tempering your enthusiasm. That 16 energy, is like the Fool card in the tarot deck. It's that young guy ready to head off on the journey, and he's, all excited. He's got his backpack packed, and he's taking the first step, and he's stepping off the cliff, right? Be prepared, right? Be prepared, but don't take that first step until you know that you're ready. But don't let yourself be so ready that you don't take that first step. That's the balance, right? And to do the work of making sure you're focused and aligned in the right direction, which means a good week to explore, is there anything going on in your life, in your environment, in your habits, in your patterns that's distracting you from holding the vision, I always tell my youngest son, I tell him, it's like playing a flute. When you're intending and you have a vision, it's like playing a flute. You want to hold that note, right? Even if you don't know what it's going to look like, you want to hold that vibrational frequency so that you are holding that note and holding that vibrational frequency, and trusting that if you can hold that and you have created a practice that allows you to focus on that note, the details will handle themselves. So with great enthusiasm, focus on the note. Okay? That moves us into the gate 5 midweek, the gate of consistency, grounding us in the gate 35, the gate of experience. That gate 35 is also Jupiter retrograde energy. So we're also, again, contemplating, who are we and what have we done? That energy of the gate 35 gives us the ability to carefully make choices around what we're going to do next. That gate 35, I call it the been there, done that energy. It's the been there, done that gate. Because we have so much experience, it allows us to be more discerning about where we're actually going to put our energy. And it supports us in crafting patterns and habits that support us in really being able to bring our vision, our focus into fruition. Mercury is retrograde, moving from the gate 26, the gate of integrity, inviting us in this Mercury cycle, retrograde cycle, to really dig deep in our own sense of self-worth and to really ask ourselves towards the end of the week, are the habits that we have actually reflective of our value? So are you doing the things you need to do to support your expression of your value into the world? Are you taking care of yourself? Are you resting? Are you managing your money well? Are you managing your body well? Are you setting good boundaries? Are you doing the things you need to do? Are you showing up for your life in alignment with your value? And are your habits a reflection of that value? And if not, time to make some changes. Or at least don't make the changes yet, but make a list of the changes you want to make, because it's not the time to make the changes. It's the time to really take stock of what needs to change and to get intentional and focused about that. The time for doing it is coming, but it's part, again, of that internal involution cycle. Venus this week moves from the gate 61 to the gate 60, eventually becoming conjunct with Pluto, which is, again, that exploration of conservatism. That does translate literally to conservatism in politics, but it's also a really good opportunity for you to explore. Are there places where you're holding yourself back? Are you expressing gratitude for what is working? Are you living in gratitude and building and creating in alignment with gratitude? Because that gratitude energy, focusing on what is working, that's a value. And that's a value that allows you to be prepared for the shifts ahead. When you know what works and you know what has been working, and you are grateful for what is working, and you're taking the actions that reflect that gratitude, that positions you for a new cycle of innovative growth. Mars goes retrograde on Saturday, highlighting the gate 31, the gate of democratic leadership. And of course, marrying that with Mercury retrograde and this deep dive exploration we've been doing on a cosmic level around what is power and the theme of power, and how do we live in a self-empowered way, and how do we not let ourselves be overpowered. And with this Mars position and all of this energy of conservatism playing out in the celestial weather, I certainly would say I don't think the discourse we've been having on leadership and power is going away anytime soon. And certainly this is a big part of our soul curriculum. We are in a place where we are continuing to deepen our own personal sovereignty. And doing that in the context of a collective leadership is tricky, is very tricky. How do we follow our own path, do our own thing, and still also be good citizens and good community members? And how do we move ourselves forward, on a community level, on a collective level? And how do we cultivate for ourselves our own inner sense of power? And are we standing in our power? Are we expressing our power? And are we doing it in a way that facilitates evolution, or are we resisting and fighting? And all of that still, this is not an energy that's going away. I'm sorry, it's just not. I'd like to tell you that it is, but it's not. And it's going to be playing out over and over and over again in all different cycles, all kinds of cycles over the next couple of years. And so the best place to start with this energy is to really begin with yourself and to really explore what needs to happen for you to feel sovereign over your own life, over your own narrative, over your own story. Where is your internal sense of power and empowerment? And are you standing in your power? Are you taking your power? Jupiter moves also retrograde to the gate 35. That's again that same energy of evaluating our past experiences, evaluating our own personal energy. Saturn highlights the 63, the gate of doubt and suspicion in the shadow. It's also a place where we begin to explore new possibilities and new potentials. And so Saturn and Jupiter always dance together. Jupiter right now is saying, I don't know, I've done that before. And Saturn is saying, come on, let's try something new. And of course, that combination of energies can make Jupiter and Saturn feel kind of like they're in a little bit in a push me, pull you kind of an energy, right? So we're both at, we're sort of at the same time trying to explore what else is possible, and at the same time going, we've already done that, right? And so there's a certain jaded quality, a certain doubt and suspicion about anything being possible, anything new happening. When we lose our creativity because we begin to doubt possibilities and we lock ourselves into the box of saying, that's not possible, that's impossible, we stop building forward. We become the people holding, blocking the threshold of evolution. And so it's a really powerful invitation from Jupiter and Saturn to ask yourself the question, what else is possible? And how strong is my faith that we can find the elegant solutions to the challenges ahead, and maybe find those solutions in a brand new box, or maybe just get out of the box in general. All right, Uranus also in retrograde goes from the gate 8, this deep place of authentic self-expression, to the gate 23, where we begin to rethink our own ideas. We're contemplating, what do we know, our own inner knowingness. And certainly I would say, again, with this being in retrograde energy in the Ajna center, in the throat center, we're just really thinking and knowing. And I really want to invite you to trust the downloads that you get, but don't feel like you got to explain it to anybody right now. It's not a time to explain it to anybody else. It's a time for you to explore your own inner knowingness and to just sit with what you know. It's like the canary, right? The cat that swallows the canary. You've got feathers sticking out of your mouth. Your ideas are like those feathers sticking out of your mouth. It's in there, but it's not time to open your mouth just yet, right? Just be patient. I'm sorry, that is a really weird analogy I just used. I'm thinking about this in the context of Sylvester the cat, right? This always after the canary. He never kills the canary, by the way. The canary always gets out, but he's always got the feathers out of his mouth when he's trying to hold the canary in, and then he opens his mouth and the canary escapes. So those ideas are like that canary, that they will escape your mouth when it's time. Your knowingness and the timing for you to share that knowingness will come through you when it's time. But if you're pushing against that right timing, you're just going to feel like you're stumbling around trying to explain it to people, and they're not going to get it, and you're going to feel frustrated. So sit with your own inner knowing and let yourself trust that inner knowingness. I think that's about it. It's definitely, again, a season of continued disruption. That disruption is us disrupting our old story about who we are. We are becoming the people we need to be to build forward. And that's a beautiful and empowering thing. But it is a time of really being in the stillness for now, being in that preparation phase. The time for action is coming. The time for right momentum and alignment is coming. But if we take action without first being internally sustainable, whatever we create will be short-lived and potentially even, violent and violently disruptive. So let's become internally the people we need to be to lead the world into the future. And once that internal alignment happens, then we begin by taking the right actions, the next right step. Have a great December. Have a great week. Don't forget, it's a season of contraction and playing. Go play, go have some joy. It's okay to be in the joy, even if it's heavy. It's an essential energy that gives us momentum. So take good care of yourselves. Talk to you later.